The desert was not forgiving, and neither were the creatures that ruled its outskirts. I had been scavenging the derelict research station on the planet Carith 9 for hours, when I heard the faintest echo of movement, a subtle, uneven shuffle that didn't belong to the wind or the settling dust. I instinctively ducked behind a broken hull of a supply ship, my pulse spiking as my eyes scanned the horizon. A figure emerged from the haze. At first I thought it was a mirage, but it wasn't. She was real, tall, striking, with skin that shimmered faintly under the twin suns, and armor that had been battered and scorched, yet still gleamed with an almost ceremonial elegance. Her movements were fluid, trained, but cautious. Her leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and she limped heavily toward the wreckage. Something in her gait told me she wasn't just injured. She was in pain, trapped by some unseen obstacle. My instincts as a human, conditioned by years of survival in unforgiving worlds, pushed me forward. "Hey," I called, my voice cracking slightly from tension. "Do you need help?" She froze and turned toward me, eyes wide with a mix of shock and wariness. She didn't speak, but the subtle curl of her lips suggested she understood. Carefully, I approached, noting the alien anatomy that made her fragile appearance deceptive. Her musculature was lean but honed. This was a warrior, not a damsel. As I knelt beside her and examined her leg, I realized the severity of the injury, a jagged fracture across the femur, compounded by abrasions from falling debris. My hands hovered over the leg, trying to plan my next move without startling her further. She exhaled sharply and then did something that froze me in place. Her hand shot out and grabbed the front of my shirt. "Don't let go," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet strangely commanding. I blinked. I won't," I murmured, gripping her leg with care as I began to reposition it. The heat of the desert sun combined with the adrenaline pumping through me created a strange sense of intimacy, of proximity neither of us had anticipated. I adjusted her leg gently, aligning the bones as best I could. Every subtle movement caused a wince from her, a small gasp, but she never loosened her hold. Her eyes, golden, flecked with streaks of amber, never left mine. "You're strong, for a human," she said finally, her voice softer now, a hint of awe slipping through the formality she tried to maintain. "Just careful," I replied, trying to mask the tension in my own voice. "We've got to stabilize it before I can move you safely." She nodded, her grip unwavering. "Do whatever you must. Just don't let go." For the next few minutes, I worked with a precision I didn't know I had. I tore strips from my shirt to fashion a temporary splint, careful to keep pressure even and avoid causing more pain. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and she occasionally bit her lip to stifle a groan. As the splint held the leg in place, she finally released her grip from my shirt, but her hand lingered near mine. There was a moment, a fleeting second, where her gaze softened, and I could sense vulnerability under the warrior exterior. "You're unusual," she said quietly. "Most humans, they panic or run. You don't." "I've survived long enough to know when someone needs help," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "And I can't leave you here." A low whistle escaped her, more of a breath than a sound. "You truly are unlike any human I've known." I didn't have time to respond before the ground trembled beneath us. A shadow moved along the sand dunes, growing larger with every passing second. The Carith beasts, massive, six-limbed predators with serrated tails and armored hides, were drawn to motion and scent. "Stay here," I said urgently, helping her into a seated position behind the wreckage. "No," she said, shaking her head. "We go together. Don't leave me." The determination in her voice was impossible to ignore. I pulled her carefully to her feet, leaning her weight against me. Step by careful step, we moved toward a sturdier outcropping, the monster's roars echoing across the dunes. She gritted her teeth, balancing herself against me, her hand never leaving mine. We found a small cavern carved into the rock, hidden from sight by the dunes. I settled her down gently against the stone wall. She leaned back, exhausted, but her gaze stayed on me. "You saved me," she said softly, almost more to herself than to me. "And I'll keep you safe," I said. There was no bravado, no hesitation, just certainty. Her lips curved into a faint smile. I didn't expect anyone to care. I care, I said simply, feeling a warmth that had little to do with the desert heat. She exhaled, closing her eyes briefly. You're remarkable, human. Hours passed as we rested, the tension of the earlier encounter slowly giving way to conversation. She told me about her people, the warrior caste she belonged to, the politics of her world, and the expectations that had always weighed on her. I shared my own stories, the perils I'd faced as a scavenger, and the rare moments of hope that had kept me alive. Despite the differences between our worlds, there was understanding, a bridge forming from empathy and shared experience. By the time the second sun of Carith 9 dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the desert, the unspoken bond between us had deepened. Trust and connection. Days passed as I cared for her injury. Each movement required her guidance, and each moment spent together blurred the line between necessity and intimacy. She would observe my every motion, occasionally teasing me about my human clumsiness or the stubbornness that kept me insisting on helping her. Her humor, sharp and alien in tone, became something I anticipated. Her eyes, always so intense, would soften when she caught me staring at her. I found myself learning her small habits, the tilt of her head when she was thoughtful, the subtle flicker of a smile when something amused her, the way she always adjusted her hair before speaking formally. One evening, as I adjusted the splint one last time, she suddenly reached out, gripping my wrist. "Don't leave," she whispered, almost vulnerable, almost afraid. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, matching her gaze. Her hand lingered against my arm, warmth against the cool evening air. Her voice dropped further, hesitant yet deliberate. I didn't think anyone would stay. Not a human. "You're worth staying for," I replied, keeping my words simple but true. Her lips parted slightly, and I saw a flicker of something I hadn't expected. Trust, admiration, maybe even the hint of affection. From that moment, our interaction shifted. It wasn't just survival anymore, it was partnership. Every touch, every glance, every careful movement carried weight and unspoken emotion. Ending, intimacy and resolution. By the time her leg had healed enough to walk without assistance, we had traversed a significant portion of the desert together. The initial fear and caution had given way to camaraderie and something deeper. She still carried the warrior's poise, the disciplined stance, the commanding gaze, but there were moments when her guard slipped, and her humanity, alien as it was, showed. We reached the edge of a plateau overlooking the remnants of the shattered research station. The setting suns painted the sands in brilliant golds and fiery reds. She paused, inhaling deeply, and turned to me. "You stayed," she said softly, almost in disbelief. "Through everything, you stayed." "I told you," I said, "I won't let go." Her eyes glimmered with emotion, and without thinking, she closed the distance between us. Her hand found my chest, pressing lightly, and her lips curved in a tentative, almost shy smile. "I never expected to feel this way about a human," she admitted. "And I never expected to feel this way about an alien warrior," I replied, a small grin forming on my face. She laughed softly, the sound like music across the barren landscape. "Then don't let go," she whispered again, echoing the words that had first tied us together. I took her hand in mine, firm and steady, and looked out over the desert we had survived. There would be dangers ahead, threats from both her world and mine, but in that moment, it didn't matter. Trust had been forged in the heat of survival, and something stronger, something neither of us had planned, had bloomed. The sun set, casting long shadows over the dunes, and we stood together, a human and an alien warrior, bound not by duty but by choice. The warmth of her hand in mine was more powerful than any weapon, more protective than any armor. And for the first time in both our lives, we knew we weren't alone. "Don't let go," she whispered one last time, and I didn't.